Hey, this is LOA Today, the Law of Attraction show. Welcome to LOA Today. My name is Walt Thiessen. It is Tuesday, December 11, 2012, and with me today, Dr. Robert Pease, who is one of the most diverse individuals I have met yet through this interviewing process we're doing for LOA Today. He has a practice in California, but he also offers a wide range of services from something called Spiritual Bootcamp to Reiki vibes to it's just this long list of very unusual things that you don't normally associate with your typical doctor. But Dr. Pease, first of all, welcome to the program.
Oh, hey, thank you so much for having me here today, Walt. It's a pleasure being here.
And just to give us a little bit of a background, tell us a little bit about your background, how you came to where you are today, just, 60-second bio, so to speak.
Well, how did I get here? 60 seconds.
Unfair question, I know.
Right, it is. Well, first of all, I'm a doctor of metaphysics. I have a degree in transpersonal psychology. It's really the language of education, but it's very, very fluid. I've done a lot. I've been around the world a few times. I've had an extraordinary life that I'm very, very, it's just been an extraordinary experience all the way around. And my interest was always in in metaphysics and spirituality from a very, very young age. I was one of those kids that was reading Paramahansa Yogananda when I was 14 and really wanting to study meditation. And, of course, I read a lot of science fiction and fantasy books, too, like Lord of the Rings and everything, because the elementals sort of excited me and the idea of these lands beyond the land that we were living in, that I was living in.
Yeah.
So I really spent a great deal of time practicing and doing the work that I'm still doing now. I've been meditating since 1972.
Wow.
So that's been quite a journey for me. And, everything sort of attracts from that place. As you raise your vibration throughout your life, you attract more and more of the positive things in your life that you want to understand and realize. So that's been sort of the journey up to now.
Mm-hmm. And you said that you have a degree in transpersonal psychology. What exactly is that?
Well, transpersonal psychology comes from the point of view of being able to go beyond traditional psychology, especially, when we build our relationships first out of Freud, and then we move into Carl Jung, and then all the other types of psychology that have come beyond that over the years. Transpersonal psychology also takes into consideration the possibility that we are living in a multidimensional universe and that there's a lot more going on than just the life that we're living right now. It takes into consideration past lives, future lives, and also the idea that there's many dimensions of consciousness. So with that relationship, the education is a little bit more expansive, obviously taking into the idea of metaphysics, that which is not just physical, and bringing that into play also. So it's a little bit more expressive.
And it's a lot more diverse than the traditional approach to psychology, that's for certain. I would imagine that you tend to draw perhaps a rather different kind of clientele from, say, what the typical psychologist who goes through traditional medical school or whatever. Well, I guess that would not be a psychologist, but the traditional approach to education is going to be a different thing entirely. You would get a different kind of patient, I would think.
Well, it's kind of interesting that you probably get a lot of the same audience, because what happens is that we're finding now more and more psychologists, and especially psychiatrists, have been frustrated by traditional understandings of the mind and the brain and how we are functioning. And we're discovering more and more people are moving into the field of wanting to know more, want to express more, want to discover more. So people who've gone through traditional counseling often have been frustrated that they're not getting to the real core of who they are because of the time that it takes to get through the process. It's not so much holistic. It's not taking into consideration that if we add meditation or, massage therapy or acupuncture or metaphysical studies or visualizations, a lot of other things that we add and include into the field within the traditional mindset is really necessary and needed and required for the person to really begin to tap into what's really going on. What is the shift and the changes in their life, or what are the blocks? What are the things that they're not able to get through? And that's where the work sort of has been, expanding for a lot of people.
So I guess there are more similarities than there are differences to the more traditional form of practice, which is interesting. I don't think I really knew that. I have to admit, the thing that attracted me most to your biography, if you will, is an event that you put on in February 2010, and I don't know if you've had them since then, called the Spiritual Bootcamp. Just the concept of a boot camp for spirituality. I mean, you're in the Army now. It was just an interesting concept all by itself. And then when I read some of the literature that was associated with what you did at that point, I was thinking that this is quite different from what many spiritual teachers tend to do.
Well, the book, it's based on the book Spiritual Bootcamp, This Is Your Wake-Up Call. And it is boot camp. My practice and how I've been teaching for quite a long time has been sort of, I don't want to say it's in your face, but it's sort of, we really have to understand the core issues that are blocking us from being able to really move forward, and what I call the map of manifestation, how we're getting from point A to point B, C, D, E, F, G. And I actually use a lot of symbolic work in that, archetypes, numerology, kinesiology, a lot of different Reiki healing, a lot of different spiritual tools are in this toolbox. And it began as a course. Believe it or not, it was 9 weeks, and I kind of teach from that place of almost like a college course. I referred every week to a lot of books that I thought people should have in their toolbox, and not obviously read during the course, but be able to have the material that will help guide them. And after teaching the course many, many times throughout 2008, 2009, and 2010, especially through, I guess, probably 2009, the information that I gathered and put together for this course material really ended up being the book that came out in late 2009, early 2010. And what this process is really stepping into what it is that we create from a desire, and then how do we go about really nurturing what it is that our intention is all the way to manifestation. And what I find and have discovered is that most people miss steps. There's parts of the process that they either they don't feel they're equipped at, or there are parts of the process they really don't understand how to do because they haven't the background and the education to help them spiritually, physically, or mentally, or all different levels. So I said, okay, let's take a look at this, and I put together this whole process of saying, let's examine where our weak spots are, and that would be the things normally that we're attracting in life, because we're giving all the time. We're always giving. That's a natural form of what we do, and some things we give very well, but the things that we don't really give very well, normally it's because we've never opened ourselves up to receiving at that level to begin with. Mm-hmm. So that's really where the course began. And, it started with 30, 40 people at a class, and then it grew and grew and grew and grew. And finally, I went webinar, telesummit in that direction with the course material. Yes, I have taught it as a course, as weekend courses now. I no longer do it as a 9-week course, but the process is also kind of expanded into the Imagine work that I do, which is all about building your desire from the end of it instead of the front of it, and working with people on understanding how they can really create this map of manifestation.
Right. You mentioned that map of manifestation. Go into a little detail about that. What's that all about?
Well, it's an interesting concept. Again, as someone who's really fascinated by metaphysics, one of the processes I really love to look at is symbolic reality, symbolic universe, symbolic consciousness. And I was a huge fan of archetypes, of course, through the work of Carl Jung and many people beyond that, Carolyn Mace, on and on and on. And that sort of gave me an attraction to also numerology, or the idea of what numbers symbolically represent. And in alchemy, certain numbers have certain symbolic meanings. The 4 is the square, which it represents foundations. It's the building block. It actually looks like a building block as a three-dimensional object. The 3 is triangular. The triangle in alchemy represents fire, an idea, creativity, truth, it's clarity. And the pentagram, which is the 5, represents man, woman, the idea of all points touch all other aspects of the universe as we know it elementally, used especially in the Chinese, the 5 elements that the Chinese speak of, both in Feng Shui and in their Chinese astrology. There is this really sort of universal idea of many symbols. And the one thing that we have in common throughout history is astronomy. It's the one thing that everyone has studied and agreed upon in some level throughout the last 4,000 or 5,000 years that we have written records back to Sumerian Mesopotamia. But also through all of this, we have the idea of the cosmos, and the cosmos is sort of mathematical. And math and numbers have always been sort of the core thing that we look at when we look at ideas and how we create constructs. So take that into consideration, bring that from the metaphysical world also into our present living. People would often ask me, well, how do you, because I'm an intuitive psychologist, at one time, I guess we used the word psychic. That word has become sort of a passé word now. The word intuitive is much more user-friendly. But basically, it's definitely intuition, and I've had it all my life. It's always shown up, even as from my childhood. So I looked at the idea of how do we connect to ourselves emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And people would say, well, how can you read someone else so clearly and so often? I go, well, it's like a radio. I kind of dial in a frequency. It's like a number that I dial in, and when the person has a clear voice, I can actually hear them. It's the frequency vibrates, it resonates within my frequency, and all of a sudden I know that you know. We kind of sort of become one in the energy. And I said, so that's where I can talk to a person from. If they're not clear, then it can be kind of difficult to communicate with them or through them. So I really looked at all of that, and I said, there's a connection here. There's a connection between who we are, the path that we're living, and the way that astrology and numerology and so many of these sub-sciences or metaphysical sciences are connected to who we are. Let's really sort of examine that. And I was fascinated by numerology because of the idea that it sort of is a common ground. It didn't matter whether it was Chaldean numerology or if it was Pythagorean or Chinese or Vedic. There were certain things that all societies, cultures have in common, how they look at numbers. And so I said, okay, let's look at your birth date and discover what's happening there. If indeed your birth date, I made an assumption, if your birth date is your life path and your name is your destiny path, obviously your name is given to you. The part that interested me was the birth date, that we all kind of sort of come in through a stargate, as it were,
Stargate.
And I call it the vaginal stargate. we come through this, and we have there's a time stamp for each individual that's very, very relevant to our frequency. And as we've learned more about quantum theory and quantum studies and the idea of vibration and energy, we know we're all vibrating, we're all energy. So there's some sort of stamp that happens. And I believe that's directly related to who we are. So and obviously astrologers, numerologists, and many other people who work in the intuitive fields or the mapping of human consciousness also agree upon. I said, let me use that as how we'll begin the basic understanding of who we are. And since there are 9 primal numbers, of all the numbers, there's 1 through 9. After that, it duplicates itself. The energetic fields that move from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is sort of a map. And I took that map and said, okay, if 1 is the intention, if it's identity, if it's the self, if it's the seed, symbolically. It represents that. Then what is two? It mirrors itself, so therefore it's a relationship to itself. It has a defined meaning when it grows from one to two. It duplicates. It has a relationship. It is going to be much more of what's inside of us and outside of us. And I just moved through this map of understanding, three being two coming together and expressing itself in a third potential of creation. So therefore it's fire. Took the symbol of fire, the energy of that, and continued forward. Four being balance and foundations and being practical. Five being all about trust and change. Obviously, 5 is a huge number in the Chinese astrology. 6 being about relationships and self-love, and 7 being about understanding, being philosophical, another grounding sort of number, doing the work. 8 being about infinite possibility and wealth and abundance and wisdom through understanding what wealth and abundance are, and 9 sort of being the ultimate level of manifestation, a realization of everything that we started from in the one. We've planted the seed, we've grown the seed, we've nurtured it, we understand what it is, we grow from it, we get the wisdom of what it has to express, and then we get to have the aha moment of, oh my gosh, look what has been created. And we see that over and over again in nature, and we also see it through our own personal reality of what we are creating through ideas, through emotional expression, through physical, actual building something. So there's this map that we're always sort of starting from the beginning and we end up at the end. And I plugged that map into people's birth dates and took the numbers that they have in their birth date and said, this is what you're giving. This is your natural ability. The numbers that are in your birth date are the things that you just naturally give in the universe. You're just out there doing that with ease and grace most of the time. And the numbers that aren't in your birth date are the things that you're attracting from others in order to have the wholeness of your experience, because we're always wanting what we don't have and what we need to feel balanced. So the universe is always at this place of wanting to bring us into balance. It's just the natural forces of the universe to be into balance. So how we construct our life, as I said, we could really take this simple formula and we can look at what it is that we are attracting and whether or not we're accepting and receiving, or we're pushing it away and resisting it, because our tendency is to resist what we don't know, what we don't like. We resist new experiences because our old programs tell us that you don't want to do that. You want to rely on the old programs, and just keep having those same experiences over and over again because, those are normal to us versus these new experiences. So we resist them, and oftentimes those new experiences exactly what we're attracting in order to create change and shift our life into having a more whole value to it, so that we can do what we are doing with ease and grace and manifesting what our desire is to its full potential self. So that's where the work really took me. And, I've developed this technique and worked with thousands of clients now. And, I've never, ever, ever once had one come back and say, this doesn't work. It's not true. This is not me. They may at first resist some of it, and then they come back later and say, you know what, you're right. This stuff is right on. These are the things that I resist, and I'm not allowing myself to change and myself to be able to attract what I need from it. So it's been quite a great little formula, and it's bigger than like numerology, which is about charting your life path or your destiny path. It's about taking a look at who we are in our desire and how we're actually going about fulfilling that desire, the way that's going to allow us to see the full potential expression of that desire, and which is, of course, joy and happiness in anything that we're doing, right?
Sure, that's true. I have to admit, as you're going through the list here of all the different, I guess I might put them into one bowl, so to speak, and call them the New Age disciplines. As you were going through the list of the New Age disciplines there, my mind was kind of reeling because for myself, and I don't know, maybe I'm atypical compared to your typical customer, but for me, just hearing that list alone is enough for me to say, whoa, that's way too much. Give me the simple stuff. I can't handle it that much. Do you run into that kind of mindset a lot, or is that fairly rare in your practice and in your experience. And if you do run into it, how do you handle somebody like me who says, whoa, don't blind me with science. Let's just get down to the bare facts here.
Well, no, I don't. I get, people are confused by the idea of, what we're talking about and the work that we're doing. That would be true of any student who is confused by any teacher who's talking about stuff that they've yet to learn. There's two ways of going about this process. One is suggesting that through the work, you're going to be the student and learn and grow and ultimately become proficient in a field that is going to also allow you the opportunity to be the teacher. We're all students and we're all teachers at some level of everything that we're doing. So that's one aspect of it. There's the one who's the seeker, who's looking for growth and wanting to learn more about the field of consciousness. They're understanding that what they know isn't working for them. They're in a rut. They're stuck. They have blocks. They're unhappy. They're not finding the joy that they want. Their relationships aren't working out. Their job, their career. And that's normally the person who becomes the seeker, because they're the ones saying, look, this isn't enough. I'm not happy at this place. Something sparks in them to say, there must be something else or something that I'm not doing that will allow me to have more joy and more happiness, because the natural psychologists have shown for years in all studies that if you take away all the crap in our life, all that's left is happiness and joy. So if we remove all the things, the obstacles in our way, our base nature is to be happy. And that's what everyone really wants. And there's sometimes so much crap in their life, they never can get through the point where they're happy. So there's that seeker. There's those who are really diligently out there, and I must say they're in the millions. That are looking for new ways. Obviously, what we call the New Age sciences has become a fact of life today. It's opening up more and more. The way that we're looking at everything is shifting and changing. So there's the seeker. On the other side of that, the one who is the doubter, the inquisitor, the skeptical person, they're not sure. Man, I love those people, because they're where the work really you get to discover whether or not the work has a foundation of truth in it, and that it will work, and it can work without the person having really any understanding or idea of what the hell you're talking about. So, that's really where the work is. It's easy to love the ones that are easy to love. It's a whole other story to work with people who are completely resistant. They're totally skeptical. They don't even know what you're doing. But their curiosity, which is the law of polarity, is the other side of skeptical. If you're skeptical, you're curious, and and everyone's looking for some sense of truth for themselves. So even in that place, the work can be very, very profound, just simply by sitting down with somebody and saying, okay, look here, give me your birth date. Let's take a look at what's going on in your numbers, with the question that you have regarding relationship, career, or whatever, and then from that place work very, very simply and helping them to understand where their blocks are, and then giving them opportunities to understand how they can move through those blocks. And if they get a result from that, if they get a new experience, well, then they want more. They want more new experiences. Doesn't everybody at that point? It's getting to the place of having the new experiences where people hit their wall of terror. They're so afraid because the monkey mind is telling them, don't do that. You don't know what you're going to get. You can't afford it. It's a strange situation. You don't even know if you're going to enjoy it or like it. I mean, the mind is the trickster that convinces all of us that, we don't want to try anything really, really new. We are a creature of habit. It's safety in numbers. It's the path of least resistance. And that is really what we call the ego telling us how to live. So getting somebody into having a new experience or a new idea will shift them exponentially in ways that it's sometimes a miracle to watch. It's all of a sudden, oh my God, they get it. And it triggers them to want to go, I want more. And then that's when they begin their journey of looking to see what's out there that can help and support them and change. And that's really the process.
Okay, that's quite a process you're describing there. And I'm not quite sure which direction to go with it first, so I think I'll just go where I'm getting my biggest attraction, if you will. The concept of what you call Reiki vibes. Now, Reiki, I have only a very limited experience with, very limited in that my wife brought home a page from some Reiki manual or something that included a little piece on how to rid your body of unwanted pooled energy that's causing pain. So we've actually tried using that on each other with some success. But beyond that, I have no knowledge of it. So give us a little background about Reiki and what exactly Reiki Vibes is.
Well, okay, there's two things in there. One, Reiki Vibes is actually a site where you can go to get, I do healing every Saturday morning from that site. You go and you sign up on ReikiVibes.net and give me your information. And every Saturday morning I do universal transferring of healing to those who come to that site. That's one thing. I also sort of attune them to a higher level of energetic field. So that's what the site's all about. It's a wonderful opportunity for people who need some sort of base healing modality, hands-on healing modality to be able to help them, get to the next level of their life, because sometimes people are in a great deal of pain. They're going through the drug therapy with the doctors. They're doing whatever they're doing or they're not, but they're not breaking through it. And I'm an avid believer that hands-on healing is a very profound, energetic way of doing, gaining some resource that'll help your health. So on that note, what is Reiki? Reiki is a Japanese word, R-E-I-K-I, which means universal life force. And that's just what it means. It's a Japanese translation. The reason we use the Japanese word Reiki is because out of Japan, there has been a lot of schools of Reiki. There's not just one. The one I most study is Usui Reiki. And this was a gentleman at the turn of the century who had a profound experience basically under a waterfall. And he had this extraordinary experience where he was feeling, universal love. He was in his divine moment. He was probably in some sort of a level of what we in the Buddhists call nirvana. But whatever that was, when he left that pool of water, he came back into society and discovered very quickly that the people around him also began to feel different. They began to feel more healed, more happy, whatever. And so he began to attract people into his life. Now, interesting enough about the gentleman, he never actually attuned anyone or did any sort of, booga booga or woo-woo on anyone around him in his life to initiate them into any form of the feeling that he had. But as he was dying, there were people who around him who felt like, wow, what he does is really very important and significant. We have to find a way to move this forward. So this is where the study and the work of the student became the master by, especially in Japan. They're all about the sensei and the teacher and having that relationship. And they really built a formula to be able to transfer this energetic feeling that he had to them, to other people. And basically the word Reiki was their way of describing what that is, universal life force, that there is in the universe an energetic field that actually is what we all are, who we all are, but at different vibrations, it's, it can be transformative. It can heal us. And obviously laughter and joy are a much higher universal life force than, say, anger and apathy and pain, correct? So, I mean, we
Sure.
definitely can feel a different vibe when we're in happiness and joy than we are when we're in anger, pain, pride, whatever. And so there's a vibration that moves through the universe. And so they did this work and they started initiating, attuning people using symbols and, words and whatever. It kind of gets a little magical, and it doesn't really matter about that point. But what does matter is that it ultimately came to Hawaii, and Mrs. Tanaka, who was one of the students of Usui School from Japan, people came to her, and she started attuning them to this universal life force. And this attunement process was her transferring the energy from her to the student. And she only, did so many, and it was kind of costly. It was kind of expensive. And then it picked up and became sort of a new way of doing a healing modality, especially in California. In the 70s, it kind of took off. by the 70s and 80s, and a lot of people were becoming attuned. They became masters, and they were teaching other people, and it became part of what was used in cancer studies. People started going out and doing hands-on healing with cancer people who were in a lot of pain from chemo and everything. And it was really calming, and there was a process that many, many people found themselves internally healing their mind, their body, and their spirit, and getting more in alignment. So there was definitely, obviously, a result from this, or it would have entropied and died. And so now there are many schools of, like I said, Reiki, and there's a lot of different kinds of symbolic work that are being done. There's a lot of hands-on healing. Of course, in the West, we've been dealing with hands-on healing through Christianity for, hundreds of years. And then this process has kind of got a very large group of people that are involved with it. They use Reiki at hospitals like MD Anderson in Houston, Texas, one of the largest cancer research hospitals in the United States. A lot of hospitals and a lot of hospices have Reiki masters who, come in or work there and teach and do the practice with people who are going through a lot of transition or pain in their life so that they can feel better, get calmer, have a sense of relaxation and peace to be able to, confront whatever challenges they have in their life. Because that's really what it's about, Walt. It's about having tools that allow us to be able to move through whatever challenges or obstacles that we want to transform into opportunity. And if we're in fear or shock from whatever those challenges are, we know that the stress on the brain causes us to shut down. And if we shut down, we're not receiving. And if we're not receiving, well, one, we're not getting any universal life force because we're shut down from that. But even on just a mental level and emotional level, we're unable to really work from a mind that's allowing us to flow easily through our life. So Reiki is a really great tool of many, many tools out there that people can simply use to be able to find more relaxation in their life. And in many cases, the healing goes where it's most needed, required, and people have had extraordinary results from it worldwide. So there's an enormous amount of documented information. You can go on Google and look up Reiki and find out, enormous amounts of results that have happened from it. So I'm an avid fan of it. It's one of my tools in my toolbox. I tune people. I don't teach them how to be teachers. I do this for free. But if you want to be a teacher, that's a whole other practice. You want to study, you want to learn. There are 3 levels in Reiki normally taught: level 1, level 2, and level 3. At level 1, you're just doing the practice for yourself. At level 2, you're learning more about how you can do long distance healing with other people. And at level 3, you're becoming a master so that you can teach other people and share the work with other people from master to student and on and on. Very Japanese, but that's pretty much how the practice works.
Okay. One thing that comes to my mind as you were going through that beautiful description is that there's reference now more and more to medical studies and application within hospitals and medical establishments and so forth. Now, you also made allusion to the fact that there's plenty of documentation out there. People can Google it and look it up. But I'm wondering more about the experience in your own life. In other words, people you've worked with and so forth. Obviously, without giving any names, can you give us some ideas of some of the more interesting things that you've discovered or been able to help somebody discover within themselves that led to some rather unusual or remarkable result?
Well, I've taught, I'm also a Reiki master, obviously. If I'm speaking of this, I've been teaching Reiki for many, many years as part of my work and doing what are called Reiki clinics, where lots of people come together and they do multiple hands-on healing with a person relaxed on a chair or laying on a table, like a massage table. And you don't really need to touch the person. That's the really beautiful thing about it. You just can have your hands a few inches from their body, and you sort of visualize and create and feel the universal life force moving through you, and you actually interpret that energy moving through your hands. There is, again, the studies show that the hands get much hotter, and of course you can feel this energy moving through your body. that is now moving through the person that you're working with. Well, when you get into several people doing that with one person, where everyone is holding this divine intention of love, the sense of you feeling peaceful and joyful within your own heart, this is an extraordinary vibration. And when the intention, again, is that, it begins to vibrate, resonate to the things around them. And the person that is getting the gift of this can actually feel physically, energy moving through them. They can also begin to feel more peace and more joy. So you actually get to have that experience while you're in it. You're feeling it, they're feeling it, and you see the shift. Now, have I been involved with any patient that is dealing with a catastrophic event in terms of physical illness like cancer, that are dealing even maybe in near death and seeing some sort of miraculous recovery from it? No, I haven't personally had that. I know many people who have, again, who work in hospice or work in hospitals or work with cancer patients. But I can say this. My mother had cancer. She had pancreatic cancer, which is a very painful way to transition off the planet. And my sister had mesothelioma, which is another one of those wild cancers that are going about nowadays, especially because of the baby boomer generation growing up around asbestos. But what was very interesting, both of those, my mother and my sister, much older. My mother was 87 when she started practicing Reiki and doing holistic medicine. She went through that process. They gave her a few months to live. Pancreatic cancer is a very, very painful way to die. It's very, very quick. Nobody wants anyone to die that way. So I presented a lot of this work to my mom and said, we can do this. And, we got my whole family involved. My sisters, I tuned them. My nieces and nephews, they learned Reiki from the local cancer hospital that was in Texas. I wasn't there. I was in New York. And they started practicing Reiki on my mom, and I was doing it long distance. And my mother lived a year with pancreatic cancer and very little pain up until the end. She actually decided at the end to go on to chemo, and really the reason she did chemo, she said, is because the side effect of chemo oftentimes is stroking. So basically she went on chemo, and 3 days later she had a stroke and she passed away, went into transition. I was with her 2 days later and got to experience that whole experience that you get to go through with somebody you love who is transitioning, which is an enormous, amazing thing. But she really had some great effect from it. She would say daily, I feel so much more peaceful and calm. And she went through the process peacefully and calmly. Now, would she have done that normally? I don't think so. My mom was an Aries. She was a fiery woman. She was, up to the day she died, she was a doer, goer, survivor, tough woman, grew up during the war, raised her kids by herself, was in retail, standing on her feet until she was 70 years of age. She was a tough broad, and here she was talking about how peaceful and that she wasn't in any pain. So we saw some effect from that. We saw that with my sister. And again, there's so many experiences where, I kind of grew up non-religious. I was raised a Presbyterian. I'm going to transition here for a second. And in that thing, I asked my mother one day, I guess I was about 12. I said, Mom, why are we Presbyterians? Or what is a Presbyterian? Went to church on Sunday. I especially liked Easter. They had lots of beautiful flowers and lilies on the podium and whatever. Dr. Lancaster was a good-looking man. He had a beautiful voice, and he spoke, of stuff I had no idea what he was talking about as a kid. But I liked being in the room. So, and I liked the Sunday school because we had arts and crafts, but I didn't really get it. So I asked her one day, what's the deal with that? She said, well, honey, when your daddy and I moved to Texas from Indiana, we looked around for a church to join because she wanted to be in a church. She had young kids. She wanted them to grow up with some sense of religion in their life. And we picked the First Presbyterian Church because it had ample parking. And so that's been my life. My life in terms of religion has been about, ample parking. I've never been a religious man. However, I've studied many different religions, Judaism, through the Kabbalah. I spent time with Pentecostals in their church, the Mormons, many different religions, the Buddhists. I've been all over India. I lived in Japan for 7 years. Italy for many years. I lived there, so I was involved with the Catholic Church. I would go to the Vatican in Rome. I mean, these major religious sites, and just sort of experience them. Go to the temples and Israel, and it's an amazing thing to be a part of. But still, got no religion. There was just nothing there that compelled me to believe the way that they believed as being the only way. I always felt like there was more. And after studying religions and looking at all of them, or a great deal of them, I realized they had a common thread. There was a common thread. And the common thread in all religion is the golden rule. It's the one thing that every religion has in common. And I thought, how profound is this? In fact, Judaism is based on the golden rule. The entire Torah is a description of the golden rule. So I was fascinated by this. I said, well, this is really what it's about. This is who we are, what we do to others, how we act onto the other, how we give or don't give onto the other is exactly how we're going to receive. And we're going to give what we get, and we're going to get what we give. And we're going to like it or we're going to hate it, but it's going to be the result of our action. And our action is both physical, mental, and emotional. And I really began to have my own internal profound experience because I realized that love is the answer. And as trite as some people make that out to be, it is truly the gift, because through love, we can heal everything, we can heal ourselves, we can heal the world, but more importantly, the vibration is really all about, kindness and compassion, forgiveness, understanding, sensitivity, all those words, relevant words, which are very feminine, nurturing, goddess energy kind of words, is exactly what our culture is beginning to transition into. We're becoming much more that energy than we've ever been before. We've been very patriarchal, very man of war, very Mars, Aries energy for the last few thousand years. It's been about war and destruction. The Kali god of India has been, going on for 4,000 years, they say, which is all about, again, destruction. And we're moving out of that. We are moving into a golden age. And I believe that's why we see so many women, especially, waking up, their sensitivity to the energetic field on the planet. They're the ones who seem to be compelled the most to be the seekers and learning and growing and doing so many of these modalities. It's fascinating to watch. I've been here 60 years now. It's fascinating to see the transition and the power being shifted from a male-dominated global event to women waking up more and more and taking their own power, empowering themselves and coming back into, their own power. More balance is on the way. So it's kind of a fascinating thing. And Reiki is one of those healing modalities that I believe has helped make this transition easier. Millions use it. Millions worldwide use some sort of Reiki.
That's quite a panoply that you took us through there, right there. Few thoughts came to my mind as you were describing all of that. First, the subject of pancreatic cancer. I had a friend who passed from that, and you're right. I mean, the prognosis for that is usually very short, usually 6 months or less. So your mom lasting a year, and not only lasting a year, but doing it almost pain-free. That's pretty close to miraculous, where pancreatic cancer is concerned. I only know of one other person who has done as well as that with pancreatic cancer, and remarkably, he's still alive after some 10 years or so. But you're right; it's one of those really horrible diseases you don't want anybody to pass from. So I'd say that her result was certainly remarkable. Second thought that came to my mind: we actually have something in common in the sense that we were both raised Presbyterian.
Oh, funny.
My own reaction to the Presbyterian Church, I suppose it's like with any kind of religion, it's going to vary from church to church. My own reaction was a little bit more negative than what you were experiencing, although I agree that none of it really came together. But for myself, it became more of a rejection, and then I had to go back through my own path to find a spiritual path that didn't tie me down to a religion. That was my way to get there. But I understand your point about the common thread. I've certainly seen that common thread myself, because I have done quite a bit of study of the various religions out there. Probably not as much as you have, but I have done a fair amount. But moving into the end of your statement there, where you talked about how we're moving into a golden age, that's where I want to take this next, because that's a theme that has been raised and discussed quite a bit by a lot of people, particularly over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. Some tied into the idea of the Mayan calendar coming to a close. Other people just tied into the fact that we're now into the 21st century and a new millennium. And some just say, well, it's just because that's where everything's going. People are waking up more. You hear from a wide range of places and viewpoints, but it's one common thread. So with that overarching description of something I probably know a lot less about than you do, what do you see coming? What do you see coming in the near term, and what do you see coming, say, more like 5-10 years down the line?
Well, I've seen a lot coming, and I've seen a lot going with this new age information. I mean, there is a lot of hype, and I do believe that there has been, a commercial side to it. We've had movies about 2012. We've had every sort of doom and gloom. The extreme fundamental religions, of course, have tapped into it as the time, the day of reckoning and the rapture, blah, 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 on their whole side of the viewpoint. And then on the other extreme side of the left, it's been, all about how we're going to, I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to move into a new dimension, and we're going to become totally different. We're going to become light bodies, and, it's just whatever. There's a lot of data out there, and it's hard to sort of comprehend it all. And again, as an intuitive, I've been asked a lot over the years, what's coming, what's happening. And I always said, in my world, what's coming, what's happening is simply that we can feel the difference. We know that we're shifting. We know that we've done more in the last 100 years on the planet than we've done in the last 4,000. We've seen the growth of technologies in the last 50 to insurmountable levels. In my mind, Steve Jobs was an alien, because how does anybody go into a garage, whip up, tinker a little computer together, and turn it in less than 40 years into Apple, which is this most extraordinary technology that is being used in science and in computer technology. I mean, it's just beyond, it blows us all away.
I also want to give a little credit to Steve Wozniak, because he's actually the one who did the work in the garage. Steve Jobs actually went out and sold it, but nevertheless, your point's well taken.
Right, thank you. Well, we use him because he's the symbol of, the Mac, but there was a whole group of them, actually, right? I mean, there was an amazing organization of people. Let's just give it to Apple. But the whole process of doing that is just, to me, amazing. And we have gone through so many amazing transformational parts in just the last 100 years, 50 years, 25 and 5. It's kind of like being a frog in this water that's slowly boiling, and you don't know the difference because you're in it. And I think that's really where we have been. We're so immersed in the transformations that are happening that we're really sort of not realizing they're happening on, sometimes on anything other than a very subtle level, because it's part of our culture, it's part of our society. But it's, we take a look at 5,000 years, we look at the last 100, it blows our mind. Mm-hmm. So this transformation that's going on is not just going to be the end of time, as the Mayan calendar speaks of, because the Mayan calendar talks in terms of cycles. There are 5 cycles in the Mayan calendar. I'm not going to get into all the technical part of what all that means and how many hundreds of years each are, but basically 2,100 year cycles, and there's 5 of them, and there's 26,000 years in a total spin of the galaxy, and all the stuff that goes on that we know with our math and our astronomy. And so they were very good at taking calculations and operating a calendar. Like I said, the one thing that all cultures have in common is astronomy. It's the one thing that they were able to look at the stars and gauge the constellations and name stars and talk about all kinds of stuff that we look at today and going, where do they get that technology to do that? We don't have any answers, so we sort of ignore it. It's part of what anthropology does. It ignores the truth because it's impossible to believe that they could build pyramids or have all these this technology at a time when they were in the Iron Age or the Stone Age. But that's another story too. We could spend hours on. However, the beauty of it is that we have been going through this. I would say that we're moving out of the age of Pisces in the zodiac, in the age of zodiacs, and our precession of the stars. And this process is like 2,100 years. We think it's going to be between 2012 and 2014. No astronomer knows the exact time because, of course, in the West, we want to have a boundary and a line down the middle of everything. Was that, and this is this. But that's not how it works. There's this sort of time period that's different than ours. So somewhere in the next 2 years, we're moving into the age of Aquarius. So obviously we're having the effect of new constellation moving into form. There's energetic field, there's energetic vibration from planetary systems. We know that because we know what gravity is. We know what non-gravity is. Planets affect each other. Solar systems affect each other. Universes are affected by their galaxies. We kind of got a feel for that now. So we're obviously being affected by something. And what's very interesting is that our planet is lining up in our solar system to what they call the galactic night, or the tree of life, which is the center of our personal galaxy, where all the light is, or the black hole is, or whatever we want to call it. But there's a huge cluster of light there. We're moving into biophotonic fields also. A lot more light is being dispersed from the inner galaxy, always out, but we're in direct alignment with that. So there's all these sort of circumstances that are going on with the Mayan calendar, the end of the 5th cycle. We're at the end of the 4th cycle of the Hindu mythology of the yugas, which are epics. Yuga just means epic, and we're closing out the Kali Yuga, which is the 4th cycle of birth, death, reincarnation of a galaxy, universe, whatever. So this has been, thousands of years of Kali the Destroyer, as I said earlier, and now we're leaving that and we're going into Kalti, or Satya Yuga, which is all about the Golden Age. So even in the mythology of the Hindus, they speak of moving from the Kali Yuga into the Golden Age Yuga, and that's happening now. So we're interesting enough going into a new epic with the Hindu calendar mythology. We're going into a new epic with the new cycle of the Mayan calendar, which is the 1st cycle again. 5th cycle's ending. We're moving into the 1st, starting the cycle all over again, which is the end of the age of the destruction, back into the age of the Golden Age. It's very interesting. We're also in a 5 pinnacle in numerology, which is about change, about chaos, about faith, trust. It's interesting, and the numbers, what comes up. And on top of that, we look at the Hopi Chronicles. We're at the end and the beginning of the Hopi Chronicle. It's kind of interesting that we're at the end and the beginning of all these different extraordinary mythologies or calendars that have been around forever. What does it mean? Well, it means that we're moving into this new cycle. And what I believe it to mean is that we are moving into 2,000 to 4,000 years of a new golden age, where we will transfer let's say symbolically, the Piscean age, which was all about, Pisces means keep it secret, keep it safe. It's about being the monk. It's all about hidden information. It's about keeping everything very private and closed. And basically that's where we were. We were run by dictators, by kings, by authority for thousands of years that said, the ignorant couldn't read or write. The masses didn't know anything. They had scribes that translated information to the kings. Only a very few people were educated. The masses were kept in the dark. But that shifted. The Gutenberg press changed everything with printing. Now all of a sudden we've got technology that allows us to be able to read and know anything. We have the least amount of literacy on the planet, 7 billion plus people, less literate than any time in history. So this all represents that Aquarian age, which is all about the water bearer, the emotional, the water being poured out from the air, that we're moving into a period where we're going through great transition and transformation, where knowledge was for everyone. The light comes in, let the sunshine in, as they sang in Hair, being able to have information, more than we'll ever need. Systems of information that are coming in through, probably black holes. Our mitochondria is shifting, which is the basis of our DNA. So we're definitely evolving. There's no doubt about it. We look at a few years, I look at thousands, and I say, where were we 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia and Samaria? Where are we today? And you see this mass transformation. So it's a different age. Is it over? Is the chaos over? I don't think we're through it yet. I think that a gentleman I know once said that we have more nuclear weapons on the planet now than we've ever had. We have more capability of mass destruction. We have the ability right now to blow the whole planet up, literally blow it up. Never before in written history did we have that opportunity. But yet at the same point that we can blow it up, we're going critical mass, that we're aware of that. We're becoming conscious to making the choice of whether or not that's really truly what we want to do as humanity. Do we want to blow it all up, or do we want to put it all away and, begin again? Now that we have all the power to self-destruct, with that power comes great responsibility. And I think that's where we're moving now. We're going to see it for the rest of my life, of this idea of this dismantling of the superpowers, dismantling of all of it, maybe even dismantling of the Treasury departments. I'm not really sure. I really feel that there is a new age happening, and it's much bigger than the corporations and businesses and governments and bureaucracy and, plutarchism and all the rest of it. We're really moving into a new way of thinking and acting. And as we go critical mass, it only takes 1% of an entire an area to reach a new level of consciousness before it shifts the consciousness around them. So, what are we saying here? We're saying as more people wake up and become more conscious of who they are, more loving, giving, forgiving, kind, generous, that's going to shift the consciousness around them. And as Carl Jung said, we can never, ever change anything from the field of problems. We can only move into a new level of consciousness above or beyond the field of problems. That's where the change happens. Never in the field of problems. The problems are always going to be there. We shift, we evolve, we move into a new state of consciousness, and we move beyond the field of problem. And I believe that's truly what's happening right now.
Okay. So what kinds of I don't really want to use this word because it tends to have a religious context to it, but what signs should we be looking for? What portents should we be expecting to see as this transition takes place in the years to come?
Well, we're seeing it. It's evident. We're seeing the collapse of dictators all over the world. I mean, we went through the whole thing just recently with Mubarak and Egypt. And I've spent a great deal of time in Egypt, and it's just kind of amazing to think that the people there have risen up and said, this isn't working for us. We're not going to do this. And pretty nonviolently. I mean, yes, there were a few Coptics killed in the process, but nothing compared to what could have happened there. It could have been mass extinguishing of a race of people because the dictator could do that. And he's gone. He's being tried for crimes against humanity. We're watching the people sort of shift around them, much like what Gandhi created in India. We saw the fall of communism, the wall. I was in Berlin when the wall went down. I lived in Italy during all the years of the 80s. We never thought we were going to see that. And it just went down. They just pushed it over. And, Russia's a whole different nation now. We've watched the evolution of China, billions of people evolving into one of the greatest races on the planet. I know the West still fears them, but they're an incredible phenomena that's growing. So we're already seeing it. We're seeing the vast wealth being looked at, the limited vast wealth being looked at, saying this is a real inequality. We need to disperse wealth to everyone. Everyone can be wealthy. There's no need for people to go without and do without. So there's huge mass changes already happening, and I believe they're going to continue to grow. As consciousness grows, it's just going to naturally unfold and shift beyond the field of the problem, because we can't solve the problem. We've never been able to. No government has ever been able to solve the problems of poverty. No government has ever been able to, our people as a country, been able to get rid of greed. That's something that's internal that has to happen to us. We have to go beyond that need to have it all for ourselves and not share it with others. And that's what's happening. We're moving out of pride. We're moving into courage. And I believe we're seeing that shift in humanity, a more willing people, a more willing to know, to grow, to have more than they know and have. And that's a phenomena that you and I are getting to see, Walt, be a part of.
Well, that's certainly encouraging. You mentioned Egypt, Russia, and China. I thought all of those were interesting choices because on the one hand, we can see the kinds of shifts that seem to be going on there. But on the other hand, in all three cases, I think we could equally apply I guess you could call it the WHO mandate, which is meet the new boss same as the old boss, because, for instance, in Egypt, they kicked Mubarak out, and now it looks like the head of the Muslim Brotherhood is going to try to establish the same kind of dictatorship. So how much of this is actually real change going on? How much of it is just a quick, shift of who's on top?
Well, I guess we're going to see, and I think that's probably, I don't know, I get caught up in living in the West. I lived in the East for a long time. I consider myself sort of a man of the planet versus a man of this country. So I know a lot of what we see and how we filter it comes through our news systems and what we believe to be true. We're not really looking at the world from their point of view. We're looking at it from ours. So when we get out of that and we move into their part of the world and start studying how the anomalies that are going on, then it begins to shift. Yes, is it going into, maybe Egypt is moving more into fundamental religious right, because that would be the normal thing that happens after oftentimes dictatorship. Absolutely. Look what happened to Iran. It went from this crazy dictator that we supported into a man of God, a man of the cloth that was just, we saw as fundamentally radical. We've watched what's this evolutionary process going on with Iran and Iraq and the crazies over there. But I think this is process. I think every country goes through this process. Rome certainly did. It went through all kinds of changes in its empire, from being really kind of a democracy to capitalism to a plutarchy system to every kind of system you can have, till it ultimately collapsed and evolved into something different. I think it's part of the evolutionary process to see the change. The point is there's change. It may look the same, but it isn't the same. It's a different nuance, a different way of going about it than they had before. And they're going to express and grow at the rate that they can express and grow. They're not going to make radical changes. Nobody does. We don't function that way as a culture or society, especially vibrate that way. The changes are slow, they're graceful, they happen, we move from it. So look what happened with Europe after the war. It went through a long period of transition. A lot went down in Europe from before and after the movement there from World War II and World War I with Hitler and all those kings that were running the whole place over there, and to transition to what it is today. It's just got would they just get the Nobel Peace Prize? The EU. So, it's kind of interesting to watch the European economy evolve into what it's becoming in our lifetime. So I think we've got to sort of give due to the idea of change, not give so much due to the idea that it should be black and white. It's either going to be this or it's going to be that, because it doesn't work that way. It's this enormous shade of gray in its transformation. It's how it works.
All right. Well, we've kept you on for well over an hour, and I want to thank you for sharing all of this wonderful insight that you have with our audience. Before we let you go, why don't you tell people where they can find you on the net?
Oh, I can do that. Thank you again, Walt, for today. It's been very fascinating talking with you, and the questions have been really great. You can find me at www.robertpease.net or .com. Right now, .com is being built again, but definitely at robertpease.net and eventually robertpease.com if they get the site up. And, any information or emailing you want to do with me, you can do that at info@robertpease.net. Obviously, I'm at Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook under Robert Pease or Dr. Robert Pease. And I also have a radio show, several myself, on co-creatornetwork.com. The Dr. Robert Show's on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, and, of course, runs throughout the week. It's sort of a spiritual variety show. I have different kinds of people on that show per 10-minute segments. I'm sort of the Wendy Williams of spirituality today, I guess. And that's what's going on with that. And, of course, I do a lot of telesummit work, so it's really important to subscribe to find out what I'm doing and where I'm at by going to robertpease.net and opting into my newsletter. I'm getting ready to do a large event for, it's called the Double Ds, the last part of February on death and dying in Arizona. One of the keynote speakers to talk about death and dying, since my background is near-death experience, addiction, and abuse. So that's a whole other field that I work in. So that's coming up. And, I do a lot of conferences. I'm around and about doing the work, doing what I love the best. So staying in touch at robertpease.net, opting in to learn more about what I'm doing is probably the best way to connect with me.
And just to make sure everybody's clear, the spelling of your last name, I don't want that to throw anybody off, so spell it out for us.
It's P as in Paul, E-A-S-E. It's Peace with an S.
Peace with an S. Okay, so that's the important point right there. But by the way, before I let you go, I got one more thing I want to ask you about. Just this past week, I interviewed a gentleman who's been through 2 near-death experiences over the last 30 years named David Bennett. I was wondering if you had any association with him or had met him at any point, because he had really quite a fascinating story to tell. I imagine you've heard similar stories, but I don't know. I thought I'd just throw it out there just to see if you knew who he was.
No, I haven't, but I'll definitely look him up. No, my near-death experiences very quickly was the first one. I've been through several myself. The first one was a car accident that killed 2 people. I survived it. I was not driving the vehicle, however, but I spent a year in the hospital, body traction, a long time in a coma. Major past near death. I actually died. So I write about that in my book. There's a new book coming out about adversity, published by Hierophant or Hampton Roads in March of next year, 2013, about adversity, and I talk a great deal about that wreck. I've been shot. I was participated in a revolution in Pakistan, and I was in New York during 9/11 down near Ground Zero. So it's kind of interesting. I've had some extraordinary moments that were close to the end, and or it did meet the end, and it's been great because it's connecting me with all the people out there who are doing it. I'm not suggesting anyone needs to go through catastrophic events to make changes in their life, but evidently I needed to, because they definitely put me on a different path, that's for sure.
Well, Dr. Robert Pease, thank you so much for joining us on the program today. It's been a pleasure, and we appreciate all of the insights you've been able to share with us. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.